this guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Mr. Speaker, imagine if, in fact, you were in a coma for the last 8 years. You would have gone to sleep in a country in 2015 where inflation and interest rates were rock bottom, taxes were following it faster than any time in Canadian history. The budget was balanced. Crime had just fallen 25% so that small town folks could leave their doors unlocked. Our borders were secured. Our immigration system was uncontroversial. Everyone agreed it worked and was the best in the world. Housing costs half of what it does today. The average rent was $950, an almost laughably low number by today's standards. Take-home pay had risen by 10% after tax and after inflation in the preceding years. The New York Times had just called Canada the richest middle class. In fact, they said that Canada's middle class was richer for the first time than America's. This, with lots of trouble in the world, wars in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and yes, Ukraine, none of which caused inflation here at home. At the time, of course, we had Prime Minister Harper, who was able to keep inflation and unemployment low, even while the world suffered turmoil. But now you've awoken, 8 years later, to find a completely different place. Inflation, after hitting a 40-year high, is still 50% higher than its 2% target. The economy is shrinking in per capita terms. It's smaller than it was 6 years ago, perhaps the first time that has ever happened in Canadian history. Canada is expected to have the worst OECD growth out of 40 countries for the next 5.5 years and the next 35 years. It now takes 25 years to save up for a down payment for a mortgage in Toronto, and many people have had their existing mortgages extended to 90 years and 120 years, meaning their great-grandchildren will still be paying it off. Houses in Canada now cost 50% more than in the United States. You can buy a home, a castle in Sweden for a lower cost than it is for a two-bedroom in Kitchener. Toronto is the worst housing bubble in the world. Vancouver, the third most expensive when comparing median income to medium housing prices. This is the nightmare that would have been unimaginable to you had you fallen into that coma and just awoken now. But there is good news. You don't want to fall back in the coma because the best is yet to come. We now have a common sense, conservative alternative that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. We call on the Prime Minister to meet the premiers and talk to him about their desire to see the tax cut or eliminated altogether. Let us grant relief to our people now until there can be a carbon tax election where the people of this country will restore the common sense consensus that will allow anyone from anywhere to do anything that their birthright is, that with hard work you can afford a good home and good food in a safe neighborhood in the country we love, in this, all of our homes, your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
Questions and comments. Commissioner Kamaltar, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Speaker, one of the problems with the Leader of the Official Opposition's speech is that it is often, whether it's inside the House or outside the House, factually incorrect. If they're axing anything, it's the facts. And the reality that they portray is exceptionally misleading. For example, he talks about there were no immigration problems. Tell that to the thousands of people that couldn't sponsor parents, or tell that to the thousands of people that couldn't sponsor a spouse when he was actually in government, when the immigration was so-called no problem. That is the actual facts, Mr. Speaker. He talks about the economy. It took Stephen Harper 10 years to create 1 million jobs. In less than 8 years, we've doubled that. We've created over 2 million jobs. I'm wondering if the member could be a little bit more honest with the facts, whether it's here or outside of Ottawa.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I don't need to criticize this government's immigration policy because the Prime Minister has done it for me.
That's right.
He has said that the immigration system is, quote, out of control. Those are his words, reiterated by his immigration minister. Both of them apparently blaming their preceding immigration minister for screwing the entire system up so badly that they allowed hundreds of thousands of students to come in to study at fake institutions that don't even exist, diploma mills. By the government's own description, now those kids are abused, taken advantage of, forced to work 20 hours a week, going home in body bags, forced to rent out half a bed for 4 hours a day, paying $700 a month. It is absolute chaos in our immigration system after 8 years of the total incompetence and the cocktail of incompetence and radicalism that has defined this Prime Minister and his appallingly incompetent immigration and now housing minister, the member from Nova Scotia, who has given us 35 homeless encampments in the biggest city in his home province. That is the deplorable record that no one, that you, having fallen into a coma 8 years ago, would have been shocked to wake up to.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have a simple policy question. It should have a simple yes or no answer. The industrial carbon tax on big polluters has been doing the lion's share of emissions reduction. It is one of the most important climate policies. We all know where the Conservative leader stands on the consumer carbon tax, but he's avoided answering questions on the industrial carbon tax on big oil and gas. So please, could he answer just a simple yes or no question? Will he scrap the industrial carbon tax?
The official opposition.
There is no industrial carbon tax on the oil and gas sector, so the member should do her research before she asks questions like that. In Alberta, the province has something called the TIER system, which is a provincially administered system that stands for technology for emissions reductions, and it allows the large industrial players to invest in green initiatives to reduce their emissions at no cost to consumers, and is one of the reasons why our oil and gas sector is the most advanced in the world. And what I propose is that we produce more of our clean Canadian oil and gas to displace the dirty dictators of the world. The real question is, why does the NDP want to put good union workers in Western Canada on the unemployment lines, steal their jobs, and send those jobs to foreign dictators around the world? We, common sense Conservatives, will bring home those powerful paychecks for our people in this country.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire, l'honorable député de Longueuil.
The honourable member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, we're going to spend another day in this Conservative carbon tax bubble. It's disappointing, but the opposition leader talked about the Liberals' housing disaster, and their record is really poor. In Quebec, nobody is talking about the carbon tax as a solution to the housing crisis. But what they are saying is that the cities aren't the problems. It's the federal government with all the delays in implementing programs, and that's why one of the Bloc's solutions is to call on the federal government to make a lump sum payment for housing, like they do for for health. That'll reduce delays. I wonder if the Conservatives would agree with that. The honourable leader of the official opposition. First of all the programs the Liberals have introduced had the Bloc's support. The Bloc voted in favor of $500 billion in discretionary expansionist spending by this government. And I'd like to point out and specify that that's not healthcare spending for seniors that didn't need to be voted on here in the House. I'm talking about spending on bureaucracy, consultants, and big centralizing programs here in Ottawa. They should stop building a bigger government here in Ottawa, and there should be more construction, less bureaucracy, more houses. That's the common sense Conservative policy.